Jake Morrison woke up to the sound of alarms screaming through his apartment. The colony administrator rolled out of bed and checked his watch. It was 3 in the morning on New Haven, the mining colony that had become his home for the past 7 years. He grabbed his communicator and called the command center. "What's happening out there?" Jake asked as he pulled on his clothes. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching the system," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter from the Orbital Defense Station. "They're big and they're not responding to our signals." Jake felt his stomach drop. New Haven was located far from Earth in the Outer Rim territories. Very few ships came this way unless they had business with the colony. The planet was rich in rare minerals that Earth needed for its expanding fleet, but it was also dangerously exposed to alien threats. He rushed to the command center in the heart of New Haven's main settlement. The building buzzed with activity as technicians worked at their stations. Through the large windows, Jake could see the lights of the city below. 50,000 people called this place home. They had built schools, hospitals, and research centers. Children played in the parks while their parents worked the mines and laboratories. Lisa Carter's image appeared on the main screen. She looked worried. "Jake, these ships are unlike anything in our database. They're organic-looking, like giant insects made of metal and flesh. There are at least 40 of them." Captain Ryan Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio from his patrol ship Defiant. "I'm moving to intercept, but I'm just one ship against their entire fleet. We need to start evacuation procedures now." Jake nodded and activated the colony-wide emergency system. The peaceful morning was shattered by warning sirens that echoed through every building. People stumbled out of their homes, confused and frightened. Parents grabbed their children while emergency teams rushed to their positions. Dr. Amanda Brooks worked frantically at the research center, downloading critical data onto portable drives. Her husband, Kevin Brooks, the colony's security chief, coordinated the evacuation of civilian areas. Their 2 young children were already at the spaceport with other families waiting for transport ships. "How long do we have?" Jake asked Lisa over the communicator. "At their current speed, maybe 6 hours before they reach orbit," she replied. "But Jake, there's something else. We're picking up transmissions from them. Our computers are trying to translate, but what we're getting doesn't sound friendly." The translation came through 30 minutes later. The alien messages were simple and terrifying. They called themselves the Zephyrians, and they considered humans to be an inferior species fit only for slavery or elimination. They demanded immediate surrender of the colony and all its inhabitants. Jake stared at the translated message on his screen. These aliens weren't here to trade or negotiate. They wanted to destroy everything the colonists had built. He thought about the children at the spaceport, the families who had trusted him to keep them safe. "We're not surrendering," Jake announced to his staff. "Get every transport ship loaded and away from here as fast as possible." "Lisa, how's our defense grid?" "We have 12 orbital platforms with plasma cannons and missile systems," Lisa reported. "Against 40 alien ships, we might buy the transport sometime, but that's about it." Captain Sullivan's voice came through the speakers again. "Jake, I'm seeing more ships dropping out of hyperspace. The count is now up to 60 vessels. These things are massive, each one bigger than our biggest cruiser." The evacuation proceeded with desperate efficiency. Transport ships lifted off from the spaceport every few minutes, packed with colonists and their few possessions. Dr. Brooks finished copying the research data and joined her family at the loading zones. Kevin Brooks remained at his post, ensuring the security teams covered the evacuation. The Zephyrian fleet reached the edge of the star system and began their approach. Through long-range sensors, the humans could see that the alien ships were indeed organic-looking, with curved hulls that pulsed like living tissue. Strange protrusions jutted from their surfaces, weapons that glowed with an eerie green light. "They're jamming our communications," Lisa reported. "I'm losing contact with some of the transport ships." Jake watched the tactical display with growing horror. The alien ships were moving to surround the planet, cutting off escape routes. Several transport vessels had already disappeared from the sensors, their fate unknown. "Lisa, begin defensive operations," Jake ordered. "Make them pay for every inch." The orbital defense platforms opened fire as the Zephyrian ships came into range. Bright beams of plasma energy lanced through space, striking the alien vessels. Some of the shots seemed to have effect, but the enemy ships kept coming. Their return fire was devastating. Green energy beams swept across the defense stations, cutting through metal and shields like they were paper. One by one, the defense platforms went dark. Lisa's station was among the last to fall. Her final transmission was broken and filled with static. "Jake, they're boarding us. Tell my family I tried to—" The orbital defenses were gone. Captain Sullivan's patrol ship Defiant fought bravely against impossible odds, darting between the massive alien vessels and firing everything it had. But one small ship could not stop an entire fleet. The Defiant exploded in a ball of fire that was visible from the planet's surface. The Zephyrian ships descended toward New Haven like a swarm of metal locusts. Their weapons began bombarding the surface, targeting the spaceport and the remaining transport ships. Jake watched in horror as vessels carrying women and children were destroyed before they could escape the atmosphere. Kevin Brooks coordinated the final defense from his security bunker. His teams fought with everything they had, but human weapons were no match for the alien invaders. The Zephyrians landed troops that looked like giant insects walking on two legs. They carried weapons that fired some kind of energy that dissolved anything it touched. Jake remained in the command center as the aliens overran the city. He sent one final message to Earth, knowing it would take days to reach home. "This is Administrator Morrison of New Haven Colony. We are under attack by hostile aliens calling themselves Zephyrians. Our defenses have fallen. 50,000 colonists are dead or captured. The enemy shows no mercy. They target civilians deliberately. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them to be ready. New Haven has fallen, but we will be remembered." The transmission ended as Zephyrian soldiers broke down the command center doors. Jake Morrison died defending his desk, the last administrator of a colony that had once been humanity's shining hope among the stars. Captain Maria Santos had never flown her transport ship Liberty so hard in her life. The engines screamed as she pushed them beyond their limits, racing through hyperspace with 847 survivors from New Haven Colony packed into every available space. Behind them, the Zephyrian fleet had turned the once thriving world into a burning wasteland. Maria's hands shook as she piloted the ship. She had been loading refugees when the aliens began their final assault on the spaceport. The images were burned into her memory. Children crying for their parents, families torn apart, and the terrible green weapons that dissolved everything they touched. She was one of only 3 transport captains who had managed to escape the system. The journey to Earth took 6 days. During that time, Maria listened to the survivors tell their stories. Dr. Amanda Brooks had lost her husband Kevin in the final battle. Her 2 children sat quietly beside her, too traumatized to speak. Engineer Carl Peterson described how the Zephyrian weapons worked, dissolving matter at the molecular level. Teacher Nancy Williams talked about her students who hadn't made it to the ships in time. When Liberty finally dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, Maria immediately contacted Colonial Defense Command. "This is Captain Santos requesting emergency clearance. I have survivors from New Haven Colony and urgent intelligence about a hostile alien attack." The response came quickly. "Liberty, you are cleared for immediate landing at Defense Command headquarters. Medical teams are standing by." Fleet Admiral Henry Walsh was waiting when Maria's ship touched down. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. He helped the survivors off the ship personally, speaking quietly with each family as they passed. "Captain Santos, I need your full report immediately," Admiral Walsh said once the last survivor had been taken to medical care. Maria handed him a data pad containing recordings from the attack. "Admiral, they came out of nowhere. 60 ships, maybe more. They called themselves Zephyrians and demanded our immediate surrender. When we refused, they destroyed everything." Admiral Walsh studied the recordings with growing concern. The alien ships were unlike anything in the human database. Their bioorganic design suggested a technology completely different from human engineering. More troubling were the intercepted communications that showed the Zephyrians viewed humans as an inferior species. Within hours, Admiral Walsh had called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Defense Council. The conference room filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. General Patricia Clark, commander of the Colonial Marines, studied the tactical data with professional interest. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, director of Advanced Weapons Research, watched the recordings of the alien weapons with scientific curiosity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Walsh began, "we are at war. The Zephyrians have declared their intention to eliminate or enslave humanity. New Haven was just the beginning. Our intelligence suggests they have a vast empire and unlimited resources." General Clark stood up to address the room. "Our current fleet strength is insufficient to engage an enemy of this magnitude. We have 43 cruisers, 18 battleships, and various support vessels. Based on these recordings, the Zephyrians can field hundreds of ships, each one larger and more advanced than our best vessels. Dr. Kane raised her hand. Admiral, I may have something that could help. For the past 3 years, my team has been working on a classified project called Prometheus. We've been exploring ways to weaponize stellar phenomena. The room fell silent. Admiral Walsh frowned. What exactly are you proposing, Doctor? We've developed theoretical models for triggering stellar collapse, Dr. Kane explained. Essentially, we can cause a star to go supernova millions of years ahead of schedule. The technology is untested, but the mathematics are sound. General Clark leaned forward. You're talking about destroying an entire star system. That would eliminate everything within 50 light years, including the Zephyrian home system. Dr. Kane replied quietly. Our intelligence indicates they come from the Kepler 438 system. If we could deploy the device there, we would eliminate their entire civilization. The room erupted in discussion. Some council members were horrified by the idea of genocide on such a massive scale. Others argued that humanity faced extinction if they didn't act decisively. Admiral Walsh listened to the debate with a heavy heart. The moral implications are staggering, said Dr. Robert Hayes, the council's ethics advisor. We would be destroying billions of lives, possibly entire species that share the system. They destroyed 50,000 of our people without hesitation, General Clark countered. They specifically targeted our children and civilians. This isn't a conventional war with rules and honor. This is survival. Dr. Kane provided technical details about her project. The weapon itself was surprisingly small, a crystalline matrix no larger than a briefcase. When fired into a star's core, it would destabilize the nuclear fusion process and trigger a cascade reaction. The star would explode within hours instead of continuing to burn for millions of years. The delivery system is the challenge, Dr. Kane continued. We would need to get within the star's magnetic field to deploy the device. That means penetrating deep into enemy territory and surviving long enough to complete the mission. Captain Daniel Torres, commander of the experimental stealth ship Nemesis, studied the tactical requirements. My ship has the most advanced stealth technology in the fleet. We could potentially reach the target system undetected, but getting close to the star would require exposing ourselves. Admiral Walsh made the decision that would change the course of human history. Dr. Kane, you have 48 hours to prepare your device for deployment. General Clark, I want your best Marines for this mission. Captain Torres, the Nemesis is now under my direct command for Operation Retribution. The name spread quickly through the defense complex. Operation Retribution. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. A single ship would carry humanity's most devastating weapon into the heart of enemy territory. If successful, they would eliminate the Zephyrian threat forever. If they failed, Earth would face invasion with no hope of victory. General Clark began assembling her volunteer force. Major Stephen Davis, a veteran of the border conflicts, would lead the Marine contingent. Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Nicole Wright had studied every available piece of data on Zephyrian technology. Navigation Officer Commander Paul Jackson plotted the course to the enemy home system. Dr. Kane worked around the clock to prepare her weapon. The device required exotic materials and precise calibration. Her team of scientists knew they were building something that could rewrite the rules of warfare. Never before had any species possessed the ability to destroy stars at will. News of New Haven's destruction leaked to the public despite military censorship. Protests erupted on Earth as people demanded action against the aliens. Some called for immediate military response while others urged diplomatic contact. But Admiral Walsh knew there could be no negotiation with a species that viewed humans as inferior animals. The Nemesis underwent rapid modifications to carry Dr. Kane's weapon. The ship's stealth systems were enhanced, and additional armor was installed around the device storage compartment. Captain Torres hand-picked his crew from volunteers who understood they might not return from this mission. As preparations continued, more intelligence arrived about the Zephyrian Empire. Scout ships reported massive hive cities in their home system, indicating a population in the billions. Their technology was based on bioengineering, growing ships and weapons like living organisms. They had conquered dozens of other species across their region of space. Admiral Walsh stood before the assembled crew of the Nemesis on the day before departure. 200 volunteers had accepted this suicide mission to avenge New Haven. They came from every branch of the military and civilian scientific corps. Each person had left behind family and friends for one chance to strike back at humanity's enemies. "You carry with you the hopes and prayers of our entire species," Admiral Walsh told them. "The Zephyrians believe humans are weak and inferior. Show them how wrong they are. Make them pay for New Haven. Make them pay for every human life they've taken." The Nemesis launched at dawn, disappearing into hyperspace on a course for the Kepler 438 system. Behind them, Earth's remaining fleet prepared for the inevitable Zephyrian retaliation. Admiral Walsh watched the ship vanish from his sensors, knowing he had just sent 200 people to their deaths. But if they succeeded, those deaths would save billions more. The Nemesis slipped through hyperspace like a ghost ship carrying death itself. Captain Daniel Torres stood on the bridge watching the swirling colors of hyperspace flow past the viewports. 3 weeks had passed since they left Earth. 3 weeks of complete radio silence as they traveled toward the Zephyrian home system. Every person aboard knew they were flying to their deaths. But after what happened at New Haven, none of them cared about coming home. Chief Engineer Rachel Thompson checked the stealth systems for the 100th time that day. The experimental technology kept their ship invisible to most sensors, but it required constant maintenance. Her team worked in shifts around the clock, making sure the delicate equipment stayed operational. Any failure would mean instant detection by Zephyrian patrols. In the ship's core laboratory, Dr. Elizabeth Kane made final adjustments to her stellar weapon. The crystalline device sat in a specially designed containment field, humming with barely contained energy. The mathematics were perfect, the engineering was sound, but this would be the first real test of her theory. She had to trigger a supernova with pinpoint accuracy, or their sacrifice would be meaningless. Major Stephen Davis drilled his Marines in the ship's cargo bay. 50 elite soldiers practiced boarding procedures and defensive formations. They might not survive long enough to use their training, but Davis believed in being prepared. His men and women came from every branch of the military, volunteers who had left behind families to join this desperate mission. Lieutenant Nicole Wright studied intelligence reports in her cramped office. Every piece of data about Zephyrian technology and tactics had been analyzed dozens of times. Their bioships were grown rather than built, making them difficult to predict. Their weapons dissolved matter at the molecular level, and their crews were insectoid creatures that showed no mercy to other species. Navigation Officer Commander Paul Jackson plotted their approach vector with mathematical precision. The Nemesis would drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, using the gravity of outer planets to slingshot toward the central star. They would have to maintain stealth while crossing millions of miles of enemy-controlled space. Pilot Lisa Reynolds practiced the final approach on her flight simulator. She would have to guide the ship through asteroid fields and past orbital defense platforms, while staying hidden from sensors. Her steady hands and quick reflexes were humanity's best hope of reaching the target. The margin for error was essentially zero. Captain Torres called his senior staff together for their final briefing. "We drop out of hyperspace in 6 hours. Once we're in the system, there's no turning back. Our mission is simple. Get Dr. Kane's device close enough to the star to deploy it, then try to escape before the supernova kills us all." Dr. Kane activated a holographic display showing the Zephyrian system. The star is a G-class yellow dwarf, similar to Earth's sun but slightly larger. "My calculations show we need to be within the star's magnetosphere to ensure the device penetrates the core. That puts us very close to the surface." "How close?" Torres asked. "About 3 million miles, Kane replied. "For comparison, that's closer than any human ship has ever approached a star. The radiation alone should kill us, but our shields might hold long enough to complete the mission." Major Davis studied the tactical display. "Intelligence suggests heavy patrols throughout the system. Bioships patrol in swarms, and they have orbital platforms around every major planet. We'll be detected eventually." Lieutenant Wright nodded. "Their sensor technology is different from ours, based on biological systems that can detect life signs and energy signatures. Our stealth might fool their equipment temporarily, but prolonged exposure will reveal our presence." Commander Jackson showed them the flight path. "We'll use the outer planets as gravitational assists, building speed while staying in sensor shadows. The asteroid belt should provide some cover, but once we head for the star, we'll be exposed." Reynolds pulled up her piloting calculations. "The final approach has to be perfect. Too fast and we'll overshoot the deployment point. Too slow and they'll have time to intercept us. I estimate we'll have maybe 10 minutes from detection to weapon deployment. Torres looked at each of his officers. Any questions about the mission? No one spoke. They had been over every detail countless times during the long journey. Everyone knew their role and the importance of success. The Nemesis dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 438 system 6 hours later. The bridge crew stared at their screens in amazement and horror. The system was even more heavily defended than intelligence reports had suggested. Hundreds of bioships patrolled between massive hive cities that orbited the inner planets. "My God," whispered Reynolds as she counted the enemy vessels. "There must be 1,000 ships out there." Torres studied the tactical display. Each Zephyrian ship was larger than Earth's biggest battleship. They moved in coordinated swarms, following patterns that suggested a hive mind intelligence. The orbital cities were even more impressive. Sprawling structures that could house millions of the insectoid aliens. "Stealth systems are holding," reported Thompson from engineering. "But we're at maximum range. Once we get closer, they'll start picking up our energy signature." Kane checked her weapon one final time. The device was ready for deployment, but she would have only one chance to fire it correctly. Miss the target, and the star would continue burning for millions of years. Hit it right, and the entire system would become an expanding ball of superheated plasma. Jackson began the approach sequence, using the gravitational pull of the outermost planet to accelerate toward the inner system. The Nemesis picked up speed as it fell toward the star, following a carefully calculated trajectory that would keep them hidden as long as possible. "Detecting increased patrol activity," reported Wright from her sensor station. "The bioships are moving to intercept something. I think they know we're here." Torres felt his stomach tighten. "How long until we can deploy the weapon?" 4 hours at current speed," Kane replied. "But we need to get much closer to guarantee success." The next 3 hours passed in tense silence. The Nemesis accelerated through the system, dodging patrol ships and automated sensors. Several times they came close to detection, saved only by Reynolds' skilled piloting and Thompson's expert management of the stealth systems. The enemy patrols grew thicker as they approached the inner planets. Massive hive cities hung in space like metallic tumors, pulsing with bioluminescent lights. Each city was home to millions of Zephyrians, the creatures that had destroyed New Haven and murdered 50,000 humans. 1 hour to deployment range, Kane announced. "All systems are showing green. The weapon is ready." Torres opened a shipwide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. We are approaching our target. In 1 hour, we will fire the device that will avenge New Haven Colony. Every human who died there will be remembered when their star burns. Prepare for hostile contact." A Zephyrian patrol ship detected an anomaly in its sensor readings 30 minutes before the deployment window. The bioship moved to investigate, its living sensors probing space for the source of the disturbance. Other ships in the patrol began converging on the location. "Captain, we've been detected," Wright reported. "Multiple contacts moving to intercept." Torres made the decision that sealed their fate. "All stop. Drop stealth and run for the star at maximum acceleration. It's now or never." The Nemesis burst from concealment like a sprinter leaving the starting blocks. Every Zephyrian ship in the system immediately turned toward them, recognizing the threat. Hundreds of bioships began accelerating toward the human vessel, their weapons charging for combat. 15 minutes to deployment range, Kane called out as explosions began to rock the ship around them. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The Nemesis raced toward the Zephyrian star with 1,000 enemy ships in pursuit. Captain Torres gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Green energy beams lanced past the viewports, each one capable of dissolving the ship's hull if it found its mark. The running battle had become a race against time, with humanity's survival hanging in the balance. Chief Engineer Rachel Thompson rerouted power from life support to the engines and weapons. "Giving you everything I've got, Captain," she called out over the noise of failing systems. "But we're taking heavy damage. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Pilot Lisa Reynolds flew like her life depended on it because it did. Her hands danced across the controls as she weaved between enemy fire, using every trick she had learned in 20 years of flying. The ship groaned under the stress of extreme maneuvers, but it kept flying toward their target. Major Stephen Davis and his Marines fought desperately to repel Zephyrian boarding parties. The insectoid aliens had managed to attach several of their smaller ships to the Nemesis hull, cutting through the armor with their dissolving weapons. Davis moved from breach to breach, his soldiers falling one by one as they held the line. "They're in Section 12, Davis reported between bursts of gunfire. "My people are holding them back, but we're running low on ammunition. These things just keep coming." Dr. Elizabeth Kane worked frantically in the ship's core, making final adjustments to her stellar weapon. The device had to be fired at exactly the right moment and angle to penetrate the star's magnetic field. One mistake would render their sacrifice meaningless. Explosions rocked the laboratory around her as she calibrated the targeting system. Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Nicole Wright coordinated the ship's point defense systems, trying to shoot down incoming missiles and energy blasts. The Zephyrian weapons were unlike anything in human databases. They seemed to be alive, adjusting their course to home in on vital ship systems. Navigation Officer Commander Paul Jackson plotted evasive maneuvers while calculating their approach to the star. 10 minutes to optimal firing range, he called out. "But at this rate, we'll be debris before we get there." The Zephyrian fleet had formed a massive cone formation, trying to box in the human ship and prevent its escape. Bioships the size of city blocks fired concentrated volleys of green energy that lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Each shot that connected tore chunks from the Nemesis hull, venting atmosphere and crew into the void. Captain Torres watched his ship die around him. The main computer reported critical failures in dozens of systems. Life support was failing on half the decks. The weapons were down to 30% capacity. But they were still flying, still carrying their deadly cargo toward its target. "Dr. Kane, how much longer?" Torres asked as another explosion rocked the bridge. 8 minutes to optimal range, Kane replied. "But Captain, I can fire now if necessary. The chances of success drop to about 60%, but it might work." Torres considered the options. Every second brought more enemy ships into firing range. His crew was dying. His ship was falling apart, but they were so close to their goal. The star loomed ahead of them, a ball of nuclear fire that would soon become humanity's weapon of vengeance. "Hold your fire, Doctor. We stick to the plan." Major Davis fell back to the final defensive line as Zephyrian warriors overran Section 12. The alien soldiers were nightmarish creatures, standing 8 feet tall on powerful legs with 4 arms that wielded energy weapons. Their compound eyes glowed with intelligence and malice as they cut through human defenses. "Captain, they're almost through to the core," Davis reported. "I've got maybe a dozen Marines left. We can't hold them much longer." Thompson's voice came over the speakers from engineering. "Reactor containment is failing. If we take another hit to the engine room, we'll go critical. The whole ship will be a nuclear fireball." Reynolds guided the ship through a field of enemy fire that should have been impossible to survive. Her pilot instincts told her exactly when to turn, when to dive, when to roll to avoid destruction. But even she couldn't dodge everything. The ship's armor was gone in places, exposing the inner structure to space. Wright's sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. "Captain, they're bringing up their heavy ships. I count 12 vessels the size of our biggest battleships, all converging on our position. They'll be in range in 5 minutes." Kane checked her calculations one final time. The stellar weapon was as ready as it would ever be. The targeting computer had locked onto the star's core, calculating the precise trajectory needed to trigger the cascade reaction. All she needed was 2 more minutes to reach optimal range. "Captain, I strongly recommend firing now," Kane called out as the ship shook under another barrage. 60% odds are better than 0%. Torres made the hardest decision of his life. "Negative, Doctor. We came here to make sure this works." 2 more minutes. The Zephyrian heavy ships opened fire with weapons that dwarfed anything the smaller vessels carried. Massive energy beams reached across space like the fingers of death, each one capable of cutting the human ship in half. Reynolds threw the Nemesis into a spiraling dive, trying to present a smaller target. Davis and his remaining Marines fought hand-to-hand as the aliens broke through their final barrier. The Major emptied his rifle into a Zephyrian warrior, watching in horror as the creature kept coming despite multiple hits. These beings were tough, ruthless, and determined to stop the human mission. "They're in the core section," Davis reported as he drew his combat knife. "I'm sorry, Captain. We couldn't stop them." Kane looked up to see Zephyrian soldiers entering her laboratory. The aliens raised their weapons, preparing to destroy the device that threatened their entire civilization. She had one chance to complete her mission before they killed her. "Firing now," Kane announced as she pressed the activation sequence. The stellar weapon shot from the Nemesis like a silver arrow, traveling at near light speed toward its target. The crystalline device passed through the star's outer atmosphere and penetrated deep into the core, where nuclear fusion had burned for billions of years. Kane watched the telemetry until the very last second, confirming that the device had reached its destination. The Zephyrian soldiers opened fire, and Dr. Kane died knowing she had succeeded. Torres felt the ship breaking apart around him as enemy weapons found their mark. The reactor went critical, filling the engineering section with nuclear fire. The hull buckled and twisted as internal explosions tore through what remained of the structure. "All hands, this is the captain," Torres announced over the dying communication system. "The weapon has been deployed. Our mission is complete. It has been an honor to serve with you all." The Nemesis exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking Captain Torres and his entire crew with it. The Zephyrian fleet celebrated their victory, believing they had stopped the human threat. But deep within their star, exotic particles from Kane's device were already beginning their deadly work. The star pulsed once, then twice, as the nuclear fusion process began to destabilize. The Zephyrians had won the battle, but they had lost the war. In 18 minutes, their sun would explode with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons, taking their entire civilization with it. The crew of the Nemesis had paid the ultimate price, but their sacrifice would not be forgotten. 50,000 humans had died at New Haven, and soon billions of Zephyrians would follow them into death. The equation was simple and terrible. Humanity did not start wars, but it finished them with interest. The Zephyrian star began to die 18 minutes after Dr. Kane's device penetrated its core. Deep within the nuclear furnace that had burned for 5 billion years, exotic particles triggered a cascade reaction that would destroy everything the insectoid aliens had built. The stellar collapse happened faster than anyone could have imagined, turning a stable sun into humanity's ultimate weapon of revenge. Fleet Admiral Henry Walsh stood in the observation deck of the Colonial Defense Command, watching the night sky through a powerful telescope. The Kepler 438 system was too far away to see with the naked eye, but sensitive instruments could detect the electromagnetic signature of the supernova. When the readings came through, Walsh felt both triumph and sadness. The Nemesis crew had succeeded, but 200 of humanity's best were gone forever. The star's death was spectacular and terrifying. In the space of hours, the nuclear core collapsed and then exploded outward with unimaginable force. The explosion was visible from other star systems, a new light in the sky that announced humanity's arrival as a galactic power. The shockwave sterilized everything within 50 light-years, turning planets into molten rock and space stations into expanding clouds of plasma. On the Zephyrian homeworld, billions of insectoid creatures looked up at their sun and watched it begin to pulse with deadly light. Their massive hive cities orbited the inner planets, housing the populations that had terrorized their region of space for thousands of years. The aliens had conquered dozens of species, enslaving or eliminating anyone who resisted their expansion. But they had never faced an enemy willing to commit genocide on a stellar scale. The supernova consumed the Zephyrian homeworld in seconds, vaporizing the planet and everything on it. The orbital cities lasted slightly longer, their bioorganic hulls dissolving in the intense radiation before being swept away by the expanding shockwave. Trillions of beings died instantly, their entire civilization erased from existence. The destruction spread outward at incredible speed. Colony worlds throughout the Zephyrian Empire simply vanished as the supernova's energy reached them. Space stations, mining operations, and patrol fleets were consumed by the expanding wall of death. An empire that had ruled through fear and violence for millennia was reduced to elementary particles. Admiral Walsh received confirmation of the mission's success 6 days after the explosion. Long-range sensors detected the characteristic radiation signature of a Type Ia supernova in the Kepler 438 system. Follow-up observations confirmed that nothing remained alive in the target area. The Zephyrian threat had been eliminated completely. General Patricia Clark reviewed the final casualty reports in her office. The Nemesis crew was officially listed as killed in action, their sacrifice honored with the highest military decorations. Captain Daniel Torres, Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Major Stephen Davis, and 197 others had given their lives to avenge New Haven Colony. Their names would be carved into monuments across human space. The political implications rippled across known space within weeks. Other alien civilizations that had been considering aggressive expansion suddenly reconsidered their plans. Intelligence reports suggested several species had canceled military buildups after learning about humanity's response to the Zephyrian attack. The message was clear: attacking human colonies carried an unacceptable price. Dr. Robert Hayes, the ethics advisor who had opposed Operation Retribution, struggled with the moral implications of what humanity had done. They had committed genocide on a scale never before seen in galactic history. Entire species that shared the Zephyrian system had been eliminated along with the primary target. The death toll was beyond calculation. But Hayes also remembered the recordings from New Haven, the images of Zephyrian soldiers deliberately targeting human children and civilians. The aliens had shown no mercy, no willingness to negotiate, no recognition of human rights. They had viewed humans as inferior animals suitable only for slavery or extermination. Captain Maria Santos, who had carried the New Haven survivors to safety, attended the memorial service for the Nemesis crew. She stood with the 847 colonists who had escaped the massacre, including Dr. Amanda Brooks and her traumatized children. They listened as Admiral Walsh read the names of every person who had died aboard the revenge mission. "Let this be a lesson to any who would threaten humanity," Walsh declared to the assembled crowd. "We do not start wars, but we finish them. Touch one of our worlds and we will burn down your sun. We are not a species to be trifled with." The words were broadcast throughout human space and intercepted by alien intelligence services across the galaxy. Humanity had demonstrated something unprecedented: the willingness and ability to destroy entire star systems in response to attacks on their colonies. The technology existed, the resolve was proven, and the precedent was set. Scientists on Earth studied the data from the supernova, learning valuable lessons about stellar engineering. Dr. Kane's theories had proven correct, opening new possibilities for both construction and destruction on a cosmic scale. The technology could potentially be used to extend the lives of dying stars or create new ones from stellar remnants. But the primary lesson was military. Humanity now possessed the ultimate deterrent against alien aggression. Any species that attacked human colonies would face the complete destruction of their home system. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. One human world lost meant one alien star system eliminated. The few Zephyrian ships that had been outside the blast radius during the supernova fled to distant galaxies, carrying with them tales of the species that could murder stars. These survivors spread the story throughout alien space, warning other civilizations about the dangers of provoking humanity. Within months, first contact protocols changed throughout known space. Alien diplomats approached human representatives with new levels of respect and caution. Trade agreements became more favorable to human interests. Military buildups near human territory were quickly dismantled when intelligence services learned about them. Admiral Walsh stood before the Colonial Council 6 months after Operation Retribution to deliver his final report. The mission had exceeded all expectations, eliminating not just the immediate Zephyrian threat, but establishing humanity as the dominant military power in their region of space. The cost was high, Walsh admitted to the assembled leaders. 200 of our best people died to make this possible, but their sacrifice has saved countless human lives. No alien species will dare attack our colonies now, knowing the price they would pay. The age of humanity's peaceful expansion was over. The galaxy had learned a new truth about the species from Earth. Humans could be traders, explorers, and scientists, but they could also be the most terrifying warriors in known space. They possessed the technology to destroy stars and the will to use it against their enemies. New Haven Colony was rebuilt within 2 years, its population drawn from volunteers who wanted to honor the memory of those who had died. The new settlement included a massive memorial listing the names of all 50,000 original colonists who had been killed by the Zephyrians. At the center of the memorial stood a statue of the Nemesis crew, immortalized in metal and stone. Children played in the parks of New Haven while their parents worked the mines and laboratories, just as they had before the attack. But now they played under the protection of the galaxy's most feared military doctrine. Any alien species that threatened these children would face the destruction of their entire star system. The equation was burned into the consciousness of every spacefaring civilization. One human colony equaled one alien star. It was a price no rational species would willingly pay, and humanity made sure everyone in the galaxy understood the mathematics of their vengeance. The children of New Haven would grow up safe, protected by the terrible precedent set by 200 heroes who had sacrificed everything to keep them alive. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. In the cold mathematics of interstellar warfare, New Haven's 50,000 dead had been avenged a billionfold, and the universe would never forget the lesson.